This is Al Bundy. A lot of you probably recognize him for being a real nice guy in a show called Married with Children.
Well, I hope you get coal in your stocking on Christmas morning.
And I hope you get slim fast in yours.
And although Al eventually did end up as a shoe salesman, I think it's very important that we all remember at one point, Al Bundy served his country.
I served my country. I played high school football.
So today I will be putting Al Bundy into College Football 26. Let's see what would have happened if he got more recognition for scoring 4 touchdowns in one game, as we follow him on his road to glory. Now you see, y'all, at one point Al Bundy was only considered to be the 42nd best player in the state. And as far as his recruitment, it was pretty much non-existent. He didn't really have many teams looking at him, but he did want to go to some local colleges in the Chicago area. But in his heart, Al Bundy felt like one day he could end up a star at a big-time college. But he knew the only way he could get there is if he played well towards the end of his season. And that all starts right now as Al Bundy is taking the field for one of the last times of his senior year. Now, it was not long into this game before Al Bundy would say, "Excuse me," and pick up some nice yards for Polk High, and see, look at him reach for every inch. You see, Al Bundy was a real tough runner, but sometimes that defense would be a little bit tougher. It wouldn't be until the third quarter where Al would start really having some success by saying, "Hey, get off me," and spin move out of traffic, and breaking himself free for a huge gain that has taken his team past the 50, but then it seems like he's getting a little bit tired and ends up getting chased down by a couple of defenders. Now, it was all good though, because his team ends up having the lead towards the end of the fourth quarter. And on this play, he has to escape his arch nemesis' spare tire. And although he's running his tail, Al was actually able to get to the end zone for a touchdown. His first one of the day that extends his team's lead to 2 possessions and does enough to put this game away. And now it actually turns out that Al Bundy played well enough to earn some scholarships at some low-level schools. This might be a pretty big deal for Al, and he knows that there could be more on the way, especially if he plays well in his next game, and he has a ton of motivation to do so, because his girlfriend Peggy's actually cheerleading for him. You see her right there? She got a little bit of a tan going on. Okay, Peggy. Now, early on in this one, Al was continuing where he left off in his last game, coming up with another touchdown for Polk High in the back half of his season, and pretty much setting the tone for them going forward. Because by the third quarter, the Polk High Panthers had a 24-17 lead, and after they ran the triple option, the fullback had taken it up the middle for another score, pushing their lead to 2 possessions before this game would eventually be tied at 31. But in a game where Al Bundy's impact was heavily being felt, it looks like it's continuing on this play as he ran the wheel route and caught a deep pass down the sideline for 6, putting up some points that not only gave his team the win, but now actually has some people thinking that he should move up to a 4-star recruit. But even though he would remain a 3-star, he was now starting to get offers from top-tier college programs. He even got one from his local college down the street. But despite that, it looks like Al Bundy actually has some haters, because the coaches at Purdue don't think that he's quite good enough to make it in their program. So unfortunately, Al is going to have to put them at the bottom of his list that he recently made for his college recruiting. You see, Al was not going to focus on wasting his time on teams that didn't even want him, because at this point he knew with him starting to get more recognition, all he had to do was just keep playing well, and he definitely planned to do so going into his next high school game. Now, in a game that had been close all throughout, the Panthers would eventually have a 24-21 lead, and on a play where Al looks like he might get dropped in the backfield, he somehow escapes his tackle. And now all of a sudden he has a ton of running room ahead of him to make a play. But he knew he had to stiff arm or truck somebody before this drive was over, so he decided to slow down a little bit before throwing this one dude to the ground, eventually getting in the end zone for a 68-yard touchdown. An incredible run by Al Bundy, but with this game still being relatively close, he knew he could not stop there. Because as the fourth quarter came around, this game got back to a 1-possession lead. But Al was looking to change it after taking his ball to the outside and bringing it upfield inside the 5-yard line. Al Bundy was putting his team in perfect position to score, which just one play later he would actually do the honors of by crossing over the goal line, not just putting his team up by 2 possessions and putting an end to this game, but after this one, Al Bundy is officially a 4-star recruit. He is getting offers from some of the biggest colleges in his entire state, and even got recruited by some more SEC schools. But despite football taking over lately, Al did still make time to hang out with his girlfriend Peggy.
This talk stuff doesn't work for us. Let's go upstairs.
Well, that doesn't work for us either, but it's quick. We can get back down here and watch TV. You said it, baby!
Now, with a couple games left in the season, Polk High was 1 game away from securing a spot in the Chicago City Championship. And in this game, as they approached the 2-minute warning, it did not look like they would get there. Eventually, though, it was actually Al Bundy who came up with a big catch and run that ultimately got his team across the goal line for a score. putting up points in the final moments of this game and giving his team a spot in the biggest high school game in all of Chicago. But as far as Al Bundy's recruiting at the moment, although he was getting offers from top-level schools, when he realized that there was only one school that would not make him come off the bench, he decided to verbally commit to a local school called Ball State. But his recruiting was not final quite yet because he still had a lot of thinking to do before going into his final game of his high school career. Where now that he has helped lead his team to the Chicago City Championship, Al looks like he's better do everything he can to put on a performance that people would remember for years to come. Now early on in this one, Al was doing a great job breaking off tackles in the backfield, allowing himself a chance to pick up some positive yards and keep his team ahead of the sticks. Eventually bringing his team towards the edge of the red zone, and with the help of Al Bundy, he would break right through, as he was just gliding his way towards the end zone for his first touchdown of the game, putting his team up by 6 points in the first quarter of the city championship. Now eventually this game would be tied back up, but Al Bundy was looking to change that after zooming upfield on this play and getting a couple good blocks downfield that sprung him loose towards the end zone for another touchdown, his second one of the day. And at this point it seems like Al has a chance to take over this game. Once again this game would end up tied, this time at 14, and the Polk High Panthers were doing a great job at feeding Al Bundy, allowing him to lead them down towards the goal line where he would eventually dive across for his third score of the night, putting some big time points on the board that seemed to give his team control in this game. But eventually Polk High would find themselves down by 6 with a minute left. But it looks like they knew to give the ball to Al Bundy, because he would actually go out there and say, hey, snapping one dude's ankles and hitting a filthy spin move on a defender as he raced his way towards the end zone for his 4th touchdown of the day, putting up a score that would not only put his name into the history books, but earn the Polk High Panthers another Chicago City Championship. With Al Bundy now being a Chicago legend, a lot of people could not wait to congratulate him, especially his girlfriend Peggy.
You know, Al, you were really amazing tonight. I mean, 4 touchdowns in a single game.
Ah, babe, that's no big deal. I mean, it's not like it's going to be the highlight of my life or anything.
Now at this point, Al Bundy was considered to be the #1 player in the state, and eventually he realized that he could probably benefit more from going to a bigger school than just a one-star program. And ultimately, Ole Miss, one of the top schools in the nation, shot up to the top of Al Bundy's board. But when it came down to it, the day would come where Al would have to make an official choice on his final college decision. And it turns out the 3 teams he'd be choosing from were Ole Miss, NIU, and Northwestern. And it turns out that for his college decision, Al Bundy would not choose NIU. Oh nah, see now his choices are between Ole Miss and Northwestern. And for now it looks like he is actually not going to choose Northwestern either. Which means that the University of Ole Miss is actually not going to be the college he goes to. As it turns out that Al Bundy will stay home in Chicago and sign with the Northwestern Wildcats. And now that Al Bundy has officially arrived on campus at Northwestern, he could not wait to get to work and really show the coaches that he can make a difference on the field. But since at the moment he was considered to be a 4th string halfback, he was making his academics one of his main priorities so he can make the coaches happy. Unfortunately though, it didn't seem like he was getting along with one of his classmates.
Well, I have just about had enough of you.
Well, you wouldn't say that if I came with fries and a medium drink.
Now, even more unfortunate for Al, even though he felt like he could make a difference for the team, he would be forced to sit on the sideline in the first game of the season and watch as his team ends up losing their first game, going down by 1 point to the team that Al Bundy actually decommitted from in his senior year. And in case things couldn't get any worse for Al, he would find out that his offensive coordinator was not happy with him, as it turns out that the classmate he'd argued with earlier was actually the coach's daughter. And he let Al know that he might as well sit back, watch, and learn because he is not going to be playing anytime soon. And it didn't matter that throughout the week, Al Bundy was absolutely balling out at practice and putting in a lot of extra work off the field in order to improve upon his game. Because at this point, the damage was already done, and Al was starting to feel like he wouldn't have a chance to play at all throughout the year. And since at the moment he wasn't getting any playing time, he knew he wasn't going to get any of that fancy under-the-table money like they have in the SEC. And ultimately, he felt like it would be best if he got a job working as a mall Santa.
You don't have to tell Santa what you want for Christmas. You want a pair of breasts. But Santa says, be happy with what you've got. The body of a young boy.
Now, Al was working extremely hard in practice over the next few weeks, as he was trying everything he could to get his coach's attention. And despite the fact that he was working just as hard, if not harder, off the field, he was still getting benched throughout the entirety of the games over the next couple weeks. But while Al felt like his chance to play would not come at all throughout this season, Eventually things would change as he was finally given an opportunity to move up the depth chart, as the coaches now wanted to take a closer look at Al going forward throughout the season. And he definitely did not waste the opportunity to show them what he had as he continued to ball out in practice, eventually doing so well that he officially moved up to the third string halfback. And at this point it looks like the coaches were happy with what they were seeing. But despite the fact that Al Bundy had moved up, he was still not at all given an opportunity to make his college football debut. And despite the fact that he was still out there working very hard at practice, another week would go by where Al would have to sit on the bench and watch his team take another loss. And it actually wouldn't be until Northwestern fell to the 19th ranked team in the country that they finally felt like it was time to make some real changes at halfback. And Al Bundy knew that this time he was on the precipice of officially making his college football debut. All he had to do was just lock in for one more practice. And eventually, Al Bundy would finally be named the backup running back. He was finally going to get a chance to play some football. But since he had been focused on football so much lately, it seems like the one person that wasn't happy for him was his girlfriend Peggy.
Never want to huddle with me.
Well, put a helmet and a face mask on and we'll talk about it.
Either way, Al Bundy was prepared to make his college football debut. And it looks like he's actually going to be in for a tough one, as in his first game, he will be on the road facing off against one of the top opponents in the Big Ten, the Michigan State Spartans. Now here in the second quarter, Al Bundy is making his college football debut. They brought him out here on a 3rd and 10 where they get the ball out to him on a screen pass, and he's able to take it upfield before breaking off a tackle and picking up a first down. He kept the drive alive and allowed his team a chance to make it past the 50. So they brought him back in to give him his first carry of his career, and he was zooming upfield for a big gain. And now it looks like they're going to allow him to come back in and potentially finish this drive off with his first points of his career, but he gets dropped in the backfield, and now Al feels worried that he might not come back in the game at all. But when they put him back in the fourth quarter, he knew he had to take advantage of the opportunity by turning upfield and pick up some yards before breaking off a tackle. And now all of a sudden Al has completely flipped the field. Now he would get taken out again because he was still the backup, but Northwestern was in excellent position here late in the fourth quarter. They gave it to Al here on a counter, who took it around the edge and had a bunch of room to work with. Soon he was making his way down the sideline before saying hey and getting smacked to the ground for a first down. Now Al was once again coming out this game, but it turns out that it was all good because Northwestern still came up with the 20-18 victory as they close out their first win against the top 25 ranked team. And for that, they would largely have to thank Al Bundy, who came up with 83 yards on the ground, with 16 yards receiving, putting him at 99 total for the game. Now at this point, the coaches were pretty happy with Al as they realized how hard he was working to improve each week. And now they would get another chance to see what he can do going into another game on the road, as Al and the Wildcats are heading into another Big Ten matchup against Indiana. Now Al would make his first appearance in this one here at the end of the first quarter. He took a handoff up the middle that seemingly set the tone for his team throughout the rest of the drive, because although they take him out right here, they bring him back on 4th down. But on this play, it seemed like Al was looking to do a little more than just move the sticks, as he gets a block downfield that allows him to get in the end zone for his first touchdown of his college football career. And you can just tell that this man was hyped. Now, I don't know where he learned that dance from. He must have got that from Peggy. Now, by the end of the first half, Al was starting to make a pretty decent impact as a receiver. And it continued here in the third with Al being able to cook up his defender, make a catch on the sideline before eventually jumping over a guy inside the 5-yard line. And even though Al would actually get taken out for the rest of the game, it turns out that he still did enough to help his team get a W, with Northwestern closing this one out 24-21. And it looks like Al Bundy made a big enough impact to finally get a chance to be the starting running back for Northwestern. This was the opportunity that Al Bundy was looking for all season, and he was doing everything he could to make the most of it before he would eventually earn the starting job, as the coaches were now more than happy to name Al RB1 and ride with him going forward throughout the rest of the season. But now going into yet again another big game on the road, they were going to need Al more than ever as he was getting into his first game as a starter, this time against one of the biggest Big Ten opponents, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now early on in this game, Al took a carry before smacking a defender in the face and springing himself open for a huge gain that got his team towards the 50. Towards the end of the drive, he was catching a screen pass that helped get his team downfield towards field goal range. Ultimately, though, he was taken out before his team had to settle for 3. But when he got back in towards the end of the first quarter, he was saying hey to the defender and really started to make a big impact on the ground. But by the end of the drive, although he had 60 yards on the game, the coaches decided to take him out and they once again had to settle for 3. But now after halftime, Northwestern finally realized that Al Bundy could not be stopped. So on this drive, they continued to give him the ball where he gashed his defense with large runs up the middle. He was doing so well that they even trusted him to run it on a 3rd down, but unfortunately they would get stopped and the Wildcats had to settle for the 3rd field goal of the day. Now, by the end of the third quarter, Al Bundy looked like he was on his way to an 150-yard rushing game, which is exactly why the coaches decided to call a screenplay, and it looked like it was working. Al Bundy had a ton of room downfield before he eventually snatched the defender's ankle and came up with a huge touchdown that helped Northwestern extend their lead over Ohio State. And at this point, it seems like they might actually have this game on lock. But on their next drive, they would ultimately get stopped on third down, ultimately resulting in Ohio State taking a 17-16 lead here late in the fourth quarter. And after they get pushed to fourth down, it is not looking good for the Wildcats. But everything seemed to change though as Al took the screen pass and brought his team downfield towards the 50, ultimately being taken out of the game, but it seems like he gave his team momentum to go downfield and kick the game winner through the uprights, as Northwestern would finish this one off on the road 19-17. A huge game that couldn't have been done without Al Bundy's 132 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown and 94 yards receiving. Al Bundy was becoming a legend in Chicago, not just because he was earning himself Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week, but because he has grown to become a dominant player throughout the city since his senior season in high school. But at this point, Al knows that his legacy is only just beginning, because now that he has a 97 break tackle, he is more than prepared to use it going into what will be the biggest game of his entire life, as Al Bundy and Northwestern are heading on the road once again, this time facing off against not just a Big Ten opponent, but one of the top 10 teams in the nation, with the Wildcats now coming into Eugene to face off against the Oregon Ducks. Now, on Northwestern's opening drive, they felt like this would be a difficult one as they got stopped on third down. But eventually, after getting the ball back with great field position, the Wildcats were doing a great job at feeding Al Bundy, because by the end of the first quarter, he had over 30 yards. It was continuously the main reason why they kept picking up first downs. By the start of the second quarter, it looked like Northwestern was getting stopped on third down, but it turns out that Oregon was actually called for a penalty, allowing the Wildcats another opportunity here where they handed it off to Al, and he was able to dive across the goal line for the first points of this game. A huge score that began to set the tone for his team as they moved forward throughout the half. They felt comfortable with putting Al out there at receiver, so it didn't surprise them that he was able to come up with the catch in an open zone and help push the team into scoring range. At this point, Al was looking like he was giving the Oregon Ducks nightmares, because he was just continuously moving the chains for the Wildcats, eventually bringing him to a second and goal where he took this counter to the outside and found a way to dive across the goal line for a touchdown, putting up some more big points in this game that extends Oregon's lead to 2 possessions. And now Northwestern almost has complete control of this game after they get the ball back up 14 at the end of the half. And with less than a minute left, it seems like they're still doing everything they can to come up with the score. They were moving towards the red zone with 3 timeouts, but the clock was ticking down under 10 seconds. They decided to trust Al with the screen pass where he was running funny, but still came up with the catch. And it's looking like he might, okay, Al. Okay, Al. Put him down, man, Al. Yo, how did he do that? This man damn near had the entire Oregon defense falling over each other on his way towards the end zone, putting up his 3rd touchdown of the day in the process. And apparently this had Oregon completely shook because after halftime, they turned the ball over in their own territory, leading to Northwestern having the ball right down at the goal line where Al Bundy comes up with his 4th touchdown of the game, putting up points that gives the Wildcats a commanding 28-0 lead. And ultimately, it turns out that Al Bundy had done enough to come up with the biggest upset of the season, as Northwestern beats Oregon so bad that Al Bundy got benched throughout the 4th quarter, and they ultimately finished this game with a 31-13 victory. Al Bundy played absolutely incredible, going for over 130 yards rushing, over 100 yards receiving, and 4 total touchdowns. His head coach was so proud of him that he told Al that he might make the league someday. And that wasn't too hard to believe when Al was winning another Big Ten and now National Offensive Player of the Week. Al Bundy had been playing incredible since he became the starter, and now he was given a chance to allow his home crowd to see it as they were heading into the final game of the season. The first home game for Northwestern in about 5 weeks. It would actually be against one of Northwestern's biggest in-state rivals, as they end the regular season facing off against Illinois. Now, Al Bundy would start this game off where he finished the last one against Oregon, breaking off tackles before powering his way towards the end zone for a touchdown, coming up with an early score that puts Northwestern ahead on his first rush of the day. But one thing's for sure is that it definitely would not be his last, as throughout the first half, Al Bundy was absolutely gashing this Illinois defense. But his impact was also definitely being felt at receiver, especially on this 3rd down, as he caught this ball in the flat and had a ton of room to work with ahead of him, pretty easily gliding his way towards the end zone for another touchdown on the day, putting his team up by 14 by the end of the 1st quarter. And now by the start of the 2nd quarter, after an Illinois turnover, this game would begin to be broken completely wide open after Al Bundy scores another touchdown on the day, putting Northwestern up by 20, and eventually they would actually go up by 27. But then all of the momentum seemed to shift after the quarterback throws an interception, and unfortunately Al was not able to catch up with the defender before he made his way across the goal line for a pick six. And by the time Northwestern got the ball back after half, it was now a 2-possession game. But once again, the quarterback would go out there and throw another pick, seemingly putting this lead in jeopardy, but eventually Northwestern would take control and continuously gave the ball back to their new star, who kept moving the chains for the team, as Al eventually moved the Wildcats down to the goal line, and on this way he was able to force his way across for his 4th touchdown of the day, putting up a score that allowed his team to regain a 3-possession lead and do enough to officially put an end to his regular season, as Northwestern was able to come up with a win against their Big Ten rival, mostly due to another 200-yard and another 4-touchdown performance from Al Bundy. And it seemed like Al wasn't letting anybody forget it even when he was off the field.
4 touchdowns. 1 game.
But if you look at his trophy case, Al now has a Land of the Lincoln trophy, and although he hoped that he potentially would get a chance to win a Big Ten trophy, Northwestern would end the season in 3rd place, just barely missing out on an opportunity to play in the championship game. On the bright side though, the team was actually ranked for the first time all season. And although they still had no shot to make the playoffs, they were still grateful for their new star running back, who turned out to earn freshman All-Big Ten, closing out the season with over 600 yards, and also helped earn the Wildcats a spot in a bowl game. A big turnaround season from what they were looking like early on, but soon it would be time for them to officially close the season out, as now the Northwestern Wildcats were heading into a bowl game against one of, if not the only SEC team that they've faced off against all season. And led by Al Bundy, they were ready to take on the Auburn Tigers. Now early on in this one, the running game was not working out well for the Wildcats, so eventually they decided to put more effort into giving the ball to Al through the air. And it was safe to say that they was a little more effective at moving the sticks, and even picking up some pretty decent yardage that got them in field goal range. But after starting this game with -6 yards on the ground, Al would start trying to find a way to turn it around after taking his ball to the edge and getting a block that sprung him loose towards the end zone for a touchdown, putting up the first score of the day for the Wildcats and allowing them to take the lead. Now unfortunately the lead would not last long as they got to the second half. But on a drive that started off with Al having only 7 carries, the coaches decided to absolutely pound the rock with Al, ultimately ending up with him having 17 carries in a drive that lasted until the 4th quarter, bringing us to a 3rd down and goal where Al would cap it off by diving across for a touchdown, putting his team up once again in this game halfway through the 4th quarter. Unfortunately, once again though, they were playing against a very good SEC team, so soon they would find themselves down by a possession with under 2 minutes left in this game. But Al Bundy was looking to change that by saying hey and breaking off a couple tackles, bringing his team all the way down to the 1-yard line, where unfortunately they would only get a field goal out of the drive, and this game would end up tied at 20 with under a minute left in the game. But just like they have throughout the entire back half of the season, they utilized their star player, and eventually with just 15 seconds left to go, Al Bundy had moved his team right up towards the 30-yard line, putting them in perfect position to kick a game-winning field goal, as Northwestern finishes this game off 23-20 and finishes their season off with a 6-game winning streak. Definitely couldn't have done it without Al Bundy, who had over 200 yards total on the day and helped the team earn a Music City Bowl trophy. And by the end of the season, Al Bundy had rushed for over 750 yards and had over 400 yards receiving, putting up a total of 12 touchdowns on his season in only 6 games. But after a year where he had to ride the bench half the season just for telling some girl the truth, he didn't know whether or not he really wanted to stay here with Northwestern. He truly felt like there was another school out there that might give him a chance to become an all-time great player, potentially leading to his high school team renaming their field after him. So Al Bundy definitely had some decisions to make, but I'll leave that decision up to you guys. If you want to see more of Al Bundy, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.